I want to start today by asking you to imagine a scenario. And it's a pretty terrifying one, honestly.
Okay.
Imagine your entire way of life is being systematically dismantled. I mean, the economy you rely on, it's gone. Your home is moved. The social fabric of your community is just being torn apart.
It's the kind of upheaval that's hard for us to even really process.
Ugh.
It's total dislocation.
Right. And in the middle of all that chaos, you have this deep, almost, desperate need to record what's happening, to say, we were here, this is who we are.
To preserve your history.
Exactly. But here's the kicker. The materials you've used for centuries to do that, they're gone. You literally cannot get the canvas you've always used to tell your story.
So what do? I mean, do you just stop telling the story?
Or do you find a way to write it on something else? And that is the absolute core of today's deep dive. We're looking at Native American ledger art.
Which on the surface might sound like it's about old-timey bookkeeping.
Right. But as I was going through the academic reports for this, I realized it's not about accounting at all.
No, not in the slightest. The term we're going to keep coming back to is strategic adaptation. It's about how indigenous artists took the very tools of the culture that was colonizing them, specifically commercial ledger books, and repurposed them.
To save their own culture.
Precisely.
So today we're going to trace this really specific, fascinating line, how this art evolved from warriors drawing on buffalo hides to men in prison cells in Florida drawing steamships, all the way to modern artists in Tucson drawing, of all things, steampunk airships.
And if there's one mission for this deep dive, it's to see that this wasn't just art. It was an act of cultural survival.
Okay, so let's unpack that. Before we even get to the ledger books, we need to set the baseline. You can't really get the adaptation if you don't know what they were adapting from.
Right. What was the tradition?
So for the Plains peoples, the Lakota, Cheyenne, Kiowa, what did art look like before, say, the 1850s?
Well, history wasn't something you'd find in a library. It was mobile. It was worn. For the Plains tribes, the primary canvas was the buffalo hide.
The hide itself.
Yes. Men would record their personal biographies and the community's history on robes, on tippy liners, even on the outside of their lodges.
When you say biographies, what does that mean? Like a diary entry?
Think of it more like a public resume, a visual status report.
Okay.
A warrior would paint his exploits counting coup in a battle, a successful horse raid. It was all representational. It showed figures doing things.
And you said men specifically.
Yes, and that's a crucial distinction. This narrative style was traditionally the domain of men. Women had their own incredible, powerful artistic traditions, but they were largely geometric and abstract. You see it on those painted rawhide containers called parfleches.
Got it. So you have this established system, you do something notable, you paint it on a hide, everyone sees it. But then we hit the mid-19th century, and the sources all point to this, well, this perfect storm of catastrophe.
It really was. And it forced a change. First and foremost, the decimation of the buffalo.
This was a deliberate government policy, right?
Absolutely. It was a strategic military move to subjugate the Plains tribes. But for an artist, practically speaking, it meant the canvas disappeared. No buffalo, no hides. Simple as that.
That's a connection I hadn't really made before. The food source is gone, but the paper is gone too.
The paper's gone. Then you have the compression of their world. Tribes are being forced onto reservations, the vast open range is gone, and into this shrinking world comes a flood of new materials from traders.
Pencils, crayons, ink.
And of course, accounting ledger books.
There's this great analogy in one of the articles. It's like us trying to write a personal diary on an Excel spreadsheet or a tax form.
It's such a powerful image, isn't it? These books were the tools of commerce, of capitalism. They were designed to track inventory and debt, the very mechanics of the expansion that was destroying their way of life.
And they just drew right over the lines.
That is the strategic adaptation. They didn't just use the paper because it was handy. They co-opted the tool. They used the white man's record-keeping device to keep their own records.
So in those early reservation days, the subjects were still the same, still battles and things.
Very traditional at first, yes. They were still drawing battle exploits, courtships, just like on the hides. The medium changed, but the message was still, I am a warrior, I matter.
But the world was changing so fast. And this brings us to what is maybe the most dramatic chapter in this story. We have to talk about Fort Marion.
This is the crucible. Absolutely.
To set the scene for us, we're not on the plains anymore. It's 1875. The Red River War is over.
The Red River War was basically the last major conflict on the Southern Plains. After it ended, the U.S. military rounded up 72 men they called ringleaders, Cheyenne, Kiowa, Comanche warriors.
Men who had spent their entire lives on the open prairie.
Right. And they were put in shackles, put on a train, most of them had never even seen before,
Yeah.
and shipped all the way to St. Augustine, Florida.
To a stone fortress on the coast in the humidity. That must have felt like landing on another planet.
Completely alien. And their jailer was Captain Richard Henry Pratt.
Pratt is a complicated figure.
Very. He's the guy who later coined the phrase, "kill the Indian, save the man." His whole philosophy was forced assimilation. But at Fort Marion, he tried this experiment with the younger prisoners. He gave them art supplies.
He thought it would be a nice hobby, keep him busy.
Pretty much. Keep them occupied, maybe civilize them a bit. But what happened on those pages was a revolution in perspective.
This is what blew my mind in the reading. The art didn't just continue as it was. The style itself changed because the reality had changed so profoundly.
Think about the sensory overload. For the first time, they're seeing steamships, locomotives, ocean waves, sharks, Spanish architecture, ladies with parasols.
They couldn't just draw memories of buffalo hunts.
They were compelled to document this bizarre new world they were in.
And how did that actually show up on the paper? What was different?
Well, traditional hide painting has no background. The figures just kind of float in space. But at Fort Marion, suddenly these artists, men like Beresheart and O'Hethoint, they start drawing horizon lines. They start trying to figure out perspective. How do you draw a train so it looks like it's coming at you? How do you capture the complex rigging on a ship?
They were basically inventing a new visual language on the fly.
Under extreme duress, yes. They were acting as journalists. There's this one famous drawing by Beresheart of the prisoners arriving at the fort. It details everything, the uniforms, the walls, the spectators. It's not just art. It's a primary source document of their own exile.
And there's a commercial element here, too. Pratt realized these drawings were good.
Oh, yeah. The tourists visiting St. Augustine loved them, so Pratt encouraged the prisoners to sell their sketchbooks.
For pocket money.
For pocket money. And this is a pivotal moment. It's really the birth of the commercial market for Native American art. You have wealthy white tourists buying these authentic Indian drawings as souvenirs.
Which sets up this really complicated dynamic for the next 100 years. The prisoners are eventually released, the art form goes back west, but now there's a market with expectations.
And that leads us perfectly to the bridge figure, Silverhorn.
Silverhorn, or Hungua, he's the younger brother of O'Hethoint, one of the artists at Fort Marion we just mentioned.
Exactly. So Silverhorn had this direct link to that prison era, but he lives a long life, working from the 1860s all the way to 1940. He's fascinating. He was the son of a calendar keeper, so he knew the old pictographic ways intimately, but he also saw the world change into the 20th century.
He sounds like the one who kept the tradition alive when it could have easily just died out.
He was the mentor, and he influenced a group of young artists who became known as the Kiowa Six. And this is where the question, what is Indian art, gets really, really complicated.
The Kiowa Six became internationally famous, right? I saw a note they had an exhibition in Prague in 1928.
It was huge. The International Folk Art Congress in Prague. Suddenly, Plains art wasn't just a $2 curiosity from a Florida prison. It was art with a capital A being celebrated in Europe.
But with that success came a trap. The sources talk about the studio style that came out of this.
This is crucial. The patrons, the white educators and buyers, they fell in love with a very specific look. They wanted to be flat, decorative, clean outlines, no background.
So they wanted it to look traditional and safe.
Exactly. They did not want the messy observational realism of the Fort Marion artists drawing trains. They wanted a nostalgic, frozen-in-time version of the past.
So the artists were being pigeonholed. Paint us dancing, paint us hunting, but do it in this one specific, flat way.
And for decades, that was the only way you could get into a gallery or a show. If you tried to use shading or perspective or any modern Western techniques, you were told, that's not Indian art.
Which brings us to the revolt. I have to read this quote from Oscar Howe, a Lakota artist from 1958. He was rejected from a show because his work was too modern.
It's an incredible letter.
He wrote, "Are we to be held back forever with one phase of Indian painting, with no right for individualism, dictated to as the Indian has always been dictated to?"
You can just feel the fury in that. He's calling out the artistic confinement that replaced the physical confinement. He's saying, my culture is alive. Why is my art being forced to be a relic?
That letter feels like the crack in the dam. And once that dam breaks, we get to the modern era. And surprisingly, to the Tucson nexus.
Right. We usually think of ledger art as a northern plains thing, but in the 1960s, Tucson, Arizona became this this unlikely laboratory for the future of indigenous art.
It started with a university project.
The Southwest Indian Art Project at the University of Arizona. It sounds a little dry, but it was funded by the Rockefeller Foundation, and its goal was radical. Break all the rules. They encouraged young Native artists to experiment, to look at abstract expressionism, to use their art for social commentary.
And out of that experimental soup comes the contemporary revival of ledger art. But they're not just copying the old style, they're doing something wild with it.
I really want to talk about Julia Areola. Her work is just incredible. She's from Tucson, Mescalero, Apache, and Mayo, and she takes those old ledger books and tells a totally different kind of story.
A steampunk story, to be specific.
It's amazing.
For everyone listening, just try to picture this. She gets authentic antique ledger paper from like the 1850s. It's yellowed, it's covered in this beautiful cursive handwriting. But on top of it, she draws these intricate scenes. One is called Inside Uncle Badger's Airship.
And it's not a warrior on a horse looking confused by technology. It's indigenous women in sort of Victorian-style dresses, but with their traditional jewelry, and they are piloting this fantastical flying machine.
They're in complete control, surrounded by gears and levers.
It completely flips the script. It's visual sovereignty. In the real 19th century, technology, the train, the telegraph, was used to conquer Native people. In Areola's world, she reclaims it. She creates an alternate history where her ancestors are the captains of industry. It's so empowering.
It reminds me of what Michael Horse said. He's another huge figure in this revival. You might actually know him as an actor. He was Deputy Hawk on Twin Peaks.
A true Renaissance man.
He made this analogy that I think just frames this entire discussion perfectly. He compared ledger art to the blues.
The blues of Native expression. It's such a profound observation.
Explain that.
He says the blues was born from immense suffering, from hard times, but the music itself speaks to resilience and humor and freedom. He sees ledger art in the same way. It was burned in prison cells, but it's not a tragedy. It's a declaration of survival.
And he's not afraid to put modern stuff in his art either. The note said he draws rocket ships.
Rocket ships, vintage cars, you name it. His argument is brilliant. He says, my ancestors drew what they saw. They drew the modern technology of 1875. If I only draw buffalo hunts, I'm lying. I see airplanes. To be true to the tradition of ledger art, I have to document my world.
That connects all the dots so perfectly. If the Fort Marion artists were the journalists of the 19th century, then Michael Horse and Julia Areola are the journalists of the 21st.
Adaptation is the tradition. Stagnation was what the market wanted, but adaptation is what the artists actually did.
And it seems the market has finally caught up. We're not talking about $2 souvenirs anymore.
No. You go to a gallery in Tucson now, and this is fine art. It hangs next to major contemporary works. It commands serious prices. It has moved from the ledger book to the museum wall, entirely on its own terms.
So let's try to pull all of this together. We started with a buffalo hide, which was a kind of resume of survival. We went to a prison where accounting books became diaries of exile.
We went through a period where the art was almost suffocated by nostalgia.
And now we're looking at steampunk airships.
It's a jagged line, but it is an unbroken one. And that's the most important thing. The medium kept changing. Hide, paper, canvas. But the core purpose never wavered. It was always about asserting identity in a world that was actively trying to erase it.
It really makes you rethink what tradition even means. We think it means doing the same thing over and over.
But here, tradition meant surviving by any means necessary.
I want to leave our listener with a thought that really stuck with me when I was looking at Julia Areola's airships. We tend to think of ledger art as preserving the past,
Right.
documenting a world that was vanishing.
Sure, that's the standard take.
But when you see these modern artists drawing sci-fi or rocket ships or these alternate histories, it feels different. If the original art was about holding on to the past, is this new wave about staking a claim on the future?
That's the question, isn't it? By putting themselves in the cockpit of the airship or the rocket ship, they're saying, we aren't just a part of history, we are part of the future.
And that is a really powerful place to land. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
Always a pleasure.
We'll catch you on the next one.